Are you having a peaceful night? Welcome to Slow Night, Ancient Tales. Tonight we are sharing a beautifully intricate piece of classic Korean literature, What Comes After, by the renowned author Lee Hyo-seok. It is a story that delicately unwinds the whirlwind of emotions, confusion, and deep reflection experienced by the protagonist, Juria. Let us step into this beautifully woven classic that explores the profound conflicts hidden deep within the human heart. Lay down your complicated thoughts from the day for a moment, and gently close your eyes. Juria author Lee Hyo-seok, What Comes After. Startled awake, Juria hurriedly put on her underwear under the covers, then threw off the blanket and bolted upright. Her heart was pounding. In her bewilderment, her two hands almost mechanically stroked her own face. It was as if she instinctively feared that her firm face might have withered overnight, just as a single flower wilts from a single night's frost. Next, she stroked her hair. She stroked it strand by strand. As she touched it, strength gathered in her hands without her realizing. Caught in her fingers, a strand or two of hair was plucked out. Later, she tore it out in handfuls of multiple strands. While tearing at her hair, her gaze fell upon her legs, gleaming white between the blankets. As if she had seen something she shouldn't have, a fresh sense of shame welled up, and she completely covered her legs with the blanket. Her head spun, and suddenly everything went dark before her eyes. Oh no, what do I do? Her eyes rolled dizzily, much like the very first moment a maiden drops and shatters her water jug. The hair she had unconsciously torn out was soon scattered in strands across the blanket. Her nose tingled, and tears welled up persistently. She felt an urge to cry out loud. As if suddenly remembering, she touched her breasts that were softly exposed beneath her chest, then hurriedly hid them with her collar. It was like fixing the barn after losing the cow, though. The brilliant morning sun suddenly burst in through the window. The moment the sunlight brushed her face, Juria bowed her head, as if shunning and declining the overly bright light. "Are you awake already?" Minho's voice, coming from behind her, now felt like a locust stinging her body, causing Juria to flinch involuntarily. "Why? Are you feeling unwell?" He seemed to be kicking off the covers to get up. The next moment, Juria felt a healthy body weight creep right up behind her back. "Does your head ache? Or your stomach? What is the matter all of a sudden?" Hot lips touched the nape of her neck, and Juria's trembling, sobbing shoulders were completely enveloped by a heavy strength. Juria shrank back like a snail for a second, then shook her body like lightning to pull away. Shuddering, Minho's body now gave her the feeling of a hideous toad. As she pulled away, she spun sharply to the left, and her right hand flew swiftly across Minho's cheek. "Devil!" Her hand flew once more. "What are you doing? Go away! Juria! Animal! Are you crazy? You are not a comrade, you are an animal. No, what on earth is the reason for this? You're feigning ignorance, because I don't understand the circumstances. Last night, to me..." Juria couldn't finish her sentence and dropped her face onto her knees. Her shoulders trembled slightly. "No, is that so? Is that so, you say? Are you that angry? How can you say that? Was it entirely my intention alone? What intention does a sleeping person have? Then who was the one tempting my heart until then? What? Who tempted you? Stop your arrogant talk. You gave me a hint at least. I asked you to act as a scarecrow for a day. Who asked you to act as a person? No, as a lover. That's an unreasonable remark, nothing more than an insult. You, who boldly played the role of a lover, overstepped your bounds. If you say that, what was the reason for driving out a sleeping person from the apartment in the first place? You think that was a trick intended to bring about this conclusion. At least the result turned out that way, didn't it? You created the cause, and now what kind of insult is this? You should have hit me or cursed at me right then. What is this behavior now? What kind of excuse is that?" Juria glared at Minho with a tearful face, as if she were utterly appalled. "I merely picked up a dropped object, like picking up a sock garter dropped on the ground." A sock garter? Juria suddenly remembered the time Minho picked up the sock garter she had dropped at the tea house Arirang, and how he had laughed, saying she drops all sorts of things. Realizing that men remember even the most trivial things, she realized her grave mistake. If it was about the sock garter, Dropping the sock garter and dropping her chastity were, in fact, mistakes of the same degree made unknowingly. Amidst her anger, her face flushed red, and she couldn't find the words to say. I really dropped quite a thing. This was her only inner thought. A highly fragrant apple within arm's reach, comrade or enemy, as long as he's not a cripple, there isn't a man in the world who wouldn't pluck it. In the end, it was the sin of physical distance. The physical distance was just too close. That's what gave birth to everything. So shamelessly, are you trying to preach to me? Juria kicked the blanket and jumped to her feet. Get out. Get out right now. I don't want to look at you. Without looking at Minho, keeping her eyes fixed elsewhere, her hand pointed to the door. Leaving is not such a difficult task, but you must understand this one thing. It was by no means a base action born solely of my own intent trampling over Juria's will. This is a very important point. The key to solving this problem lies in this. Juria's face flushed red once more. Unable to find an appropriate answer, she stood there hesitating for a while. Then, if you won't leave, I will. Saying this, she ran out of the room as if she could not bear to stay in it a moment longer. Barely acknowledging the morning greeting of the maid who rustled out from the downstairs room by the door, Juria burst out the door and rushed frantically down the hill. Her face burned fiercely, as if splashed with fire. Wishing she could find a cave to hide in, her hurried, erratic footsteps swung quickly down the hill. The sun rose fully, brightly illuminating the nearby sea in a straight line. The recessed sea was as calm as a lake, without a single ripple. The sky was clear, the vegetation fresh, and the air cold. Going all the way down to the shoreline, Juria sank down onto the sand. What happened last night? Unconsciously, the memories of the previous night revived, pounding her heart and heating her face. Furthermore, Minho's final words from earlier clung to her chest and would not let go. She even felt like submerging her hot body into the seawater. With what face can I confront Juwa? The more she thought about it, the more overwhelming it was. Beyond the feeling of a maiden shattering her water jug, it now felt as if the sky had been overturned and the earth smashed. If she did not love Juwa, the matter would be different. But as long as she currently loved him, this was a forbidden path. Plucking that forbidden fruit, whether by mistake or unconsciously, was an unforgivable folly and a sin. No matter how modern her view of chastity might be, this would not be permitted. Thinking this, Juria ultimately just writhed in agony over the sin she had committed, over what to do with her tainted body. Why couldn't I resist back then? This thought carved into her heart even more and poured the fire of shame over her. She now rather wanted to curse the uncontrollable power of lust. Even so, it wasn't as if she hadn't entirely foreseen this outcome from the beginning. This regret, disillusionment, and sorrow after the fact, if there was anything she hadn't foreseen, it was precisely this. It was the mindset of forcefully blowing up an expanding rubber balloon, fully knowing it would pop, bursting it anyway, and then feeling fresh remorse afterward. Love, hate, regret. The diverging stems of the heart and contradictory feelings, Juria now felt this once again. Dampening her towel with seawater to cool her face, she walked along the sandy beach and climbed onto a rock. From the rock, she stepped back onto the road. During this time, her disordered emotions gradually settled and unified, and now turned once more toward the final focal point, Juwa. Concentrated into a single point, it was all the more lamentable. How do I face Juwa? It would be right to confess everything. Then what on earth will Juwa say? What will he do with me? When she thought of Juwa, her heart was always extremely pure and clean. She could not hide even the smallest thing from Juwa. That was how deep the love she devoted to Juhwa was. Her conscience, which was the very love she had for Juhwa, had now put her into a wheel of torment, bringing her to an end. Miss, where are you going?" The sound of footsteps from behind belonged to the inn's maid. "I came out here to get some fresh air." Observing the maid's demeanor, who seemed to sense something suspicious, Juria feigned innocence and replied casually, "Yes, I see. So early." The maid smiled, as if embarrassed by Juria's earlier frantic appearance, and spoke casually. "Shall I guide you around this area?" "I'm done walking. I'll go back inside." Fearing that acting clumsily might instead reveal her inner thoughts, Juria turned her steps back. Returning to the inn side by side with the maid, she went upstairs and opened the room door, wondering if Minho had left or was still there. Minho was still there. He was sitting by the brazier with his head bowed deeply. As if lost in deep thought, he didn't immediately raise his head even when Juria entered. Because seeing him would revive the memories once more, Juria looked the other way, went to a corner, and began to silently pack her bags. Juria. Minho raised his head. His voice was heavy. There are things called mistakes in this world. Is there any need to part ways so bitterly with such an unpleasant conclusion? Even if you attribute it to my mistake as you think, let's keep in touch as usual from now on. Wouldn't it be better not to draw other people's attention by making your attitude too obvious? You're saying we should hide everything? Just as you said last night that we also need romanticism. Isn't it enough to wrap it up as a piece of romantic memory? I'm leaving first. Having packed her bags and lightly freshened up, Juria let Minho's words go in one ear and out the other, picked up her suitcase, and walked out the door. Juria. She went downstairs, pretending not to hear. She whispered a few words to the puzzled maid and left the inn in the early morning. She planned to take the first train to Seoul. Since she didn't know what had happened to her brothers afterward, she couldn't go home, so she intended to stay with Hala at Arirang for the time being. Packed up and traveling from early morning, what's going on today? When Juria knocked on the door of Arirang, which hadn't even opened yet, straight off the morning train from Incheon, Hala came out rubbing her eyes and opened the door in wonder. Something came up. Where are you heading? I've come here. Do you need to bring a suitcase just to come here? Things just turned out that way. Placing her suitcase on a table and slumping down, Juria said, My brothers came up from the countryside, so I'm basically being chased out of my house. You should have come here earlier. If you get caught, you'd be in for it. I felt bad coming here right from the start. Hala took Juria by the hand and led her to the back room, as Juria vaguely glossed over the situation. Don't worry about that and come into the room. A spacious single room attached to the back of the shop behind a thick wall, Hala's living quarters and bedroom, was cluttered with clothes, chests, dishes, and bedding ahead of a day that had not yet begun. If you hide in here, no one will know, even if the streets turn upside down. Hala silently folded up the bedding and changed her clothes. Shall I stay for a while? Juria assumed a nonchalant posture. However, while Hala went out to prepare breakfast, making clattering noises, a measure of composure settled over Juria's heart, and within that clear composure, all her secrets and agonies revived anew. Late morning sunlight streamed in through the window opening to the back alley, dyeing the potted geranium on the windowsill a deep pink. To Juria's clouded heart, that clear, fresh pink was excessively heavy baggage. Though there are many shades of red, the fresh pink of the geranium was, conversely, dazzling to Juria's red heart. Much like how the clear light of the sun is excessively glaring to dark eyes, Hala's pure passion, which kept company with that dazzling geranium, a piece of red heart steadfastly devoted to one person, suddenly felt enviable. When Juria thought, isn't the difference between Hala's passion and my heart as great as the difference in altered soil? She felt that Hala's simple livelihood was too pure and sacred to accept Juria's tainted body. Turning her eyes away from the emotion of the geranium, a book tucked in the bookshelf suddenly caught Juria's eye. Drawn by a renewed sense of emotion, Juria pulled out that one book she had already outgrown, Kolantai's Red Love, from the shelf. As to her lonely heart searching for a place to lean on, it felt like a sturdy pillar. Opening the thick book here and there and pointlessly reading passage after passage, she tried forcing herself to find a section that resonated with her heart. But a passage that could defend her current situation did not easily meet her eyes. In the meantime, a postcard slipped out from between the fluttering pages. A letter from Hyunjo Dong stamped with a blue censor's seal. When she mindlessly flipped it over, a couple of lines firmly written in pencil clearly caught her eye. Hala, being in a lonely world, I only have a heart searching for something solid to believe in. Your heart, firm as iron, is the only place my heart can currently rely on. A heart firmly believing in ideology and in love. I am keenly feeling here that a person cannot live without this. This confession of a lonely heart, which was in no way sentimental, pierced Juria's chest. The heart of the person in prison and Hala's steadfast resolve moved Juria's heart. Juria felt that her own heart, fragile as a glass vessel, was ultimately worthless. Hearing the sound of footsteps, Juria swiftly hid the postcard back between the pages of the book. It was Hala bringing breakfast on a tray. It's very modest, but this is breakfast. Without showing much sign of feeling apologetic, Hala set the tray down on the desk. Strong coffee, chunks of bread, a whole block of butter. The rising steam from the hot coffee was fragrant. But even this is rather a luxury when I think of the person in there. There are many times when the fragrance of this single cup of coffee catches in my throat. As Hala offered the tea while expressing her feelings, she suddenly noticed the book spread open under Juria's hand. Read Love, all of a sudden, and looked at Juria. I suddenly wanted to read it. What do you think of colontism? Colontism. It is a deviance and heresy regarding sexual life, by no means the establishment of a new sexual morality. At least that's what I think. Then, for instance, Vasilisa's actions are nothing more than the promiscuous behavior of a lewd woman. What about her merits as a staunch fighter? Her merits as a fighter are merits, and love is love. The one has absolutely nothing to do with the other. Ideology stems from conscience, and love stems from sensation. And I think it's an unreasonable stretch that Vasilisa's group tried to camouflage the sensation of love with the conscience of ideology. In other words, they put forth ideology to hide their promiscuous lust? Not necessarily, but I do think they abused lust by hiding in the shadow of ideology, covering up a sesai lustful life, which is nothing more than an animalistic aspect, with the respectable signboard of ideology as a cunning and sly act. Vasilisa might have been a staunch fighter in the end, but on the other hand, what is she but a lewd animal? Not a human, but an animal. At Hala's strict posture, which was just like that of a judge, Juria couldn't help but suddenly ask back in that way. If Vasilisa is an animal, then what am I? As this proposition circled in her chest, Juria felt as if she couldn't even lift her head properly in front of Hala. Vasilisa at least has the aspect of a staunch fighter. I am nothing more than a feverish delinquent girl. I amount to nothing more than a simple animal. All day long, while Hala was out in the shop greeting customers and clattering about her work, these reflections welled up, constricting Juria's heart. When the afternoon passed and there was a brief lull in customers, Hala came into the back room with a plate of fruit and something to eat. As soon as Hala put the tray down on the desk, a suddenly familiar voice was heard from outside. Hala uni! Hala uni! Hala hurriedly went out again without even a moment to catch her breath. Why, Namhui? What's the matter? I have urgent business, so I came running. Listening closely, it was unmistakably Namhui's voice. Hala's puzzled attitude and Namhui's urgency could be clearly guessed by Juria just from their voices. With what urgent matter? Namhui paused for a long time as if it were awkward to say, then, has Mr. Minho perhaps come here? She hurriedly continued. Wait, why Minho? The single word Minho struck her head like a mace. Juria felt dizzy for a moment, but she held her breath again and turned her whole body into an ear, straining to listen to the conversation outside the door. Juria's tangled thoughts have drifted away like scattered clouds in the night sky. I hope the profound words of Lee Hyo-seok, carrying the worries of an era and the wandering of youth, have left a gentle ripple in your mind. Sometimes, even our most complex emotions settle down silently in the deep embrace of the quiet night. Tonight, may you let go of all your burdens and fall into the most peaceful sleep. This is Slow Night, Ancient Tales. Good night and sweet dreams.